I'm ready. All right. So good morning, everyone. Well, actually afternoon. Um, I'm Kimberly Brown, and I own a consulting company called Nanny Kim on the Go. I've been in the industry for probably like 27 years now. And one of the things that I do is I help with conflict resolution and helping people understand how to start the hard conversations. And I parents and new nannies understand the business of nannying. So, one of the things that I'm known for is kind of doing these role play and scenario um, to simulate these conversations, but also helping people really get a grasp of how they want to go into conflict resolution. So, we can go to the next screen. Thank you. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what are hard conversations, why they are needed, and the difference between mediation and conflict resolution. A lot of times we'll think conflict resolution and mediation is the same, but it's a different tactic, different form of problem solving. So we'll talk about those, and we'll also kind of glaze over the 5 different styles of conflict to see where you fit, which should be fun. And then we're going to talk about the main method that I like to teach, which is the sandwich method. So we are actually going to fit this all in today, and we can go to the next slide and we'll start. So when we talk about hard conversations, um, I think I love to have people think about what is a conversation, like a recent conversation that you have had that you feel I could have done better. like, or um, in this conversation, I probably should have said this, or this is how I would have liked it to go, but it really didn't go that way. And think about that conversation and keep that in your head. Even if you want to chat it in, I mean, put it in the chat, let me know about, when's the last time you've had them? Because I know I recently had one, probably this weekend. It was a hard conversation. And even me, the person who teaches about conflict resolution, I felt myself not even wanting to get engaged into the conversation because I was just like, man, this is going to be one of those conversations that I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to, you know, um, seem like I'm rude, or, we always think about those things. So, what are some of the reasons that we have hard conversations? And one of them we is to make the hard conversation, to make the hard communication that is stressful or difficult to us, um, to make a difference in it, to like cause a difference in that person, um, and make them see your views. So, we may cause it may cause us to like realize that we need to work on the way that we deliver. Hard conversations are a lot about emotions, facts, people explaining their grievances, or being, or their grievances are actually being spoken out to you. So you're having to listen, and not so much be on the defensive. But then sometimes that can be really hard if you feel like someone is saying something to you where you need to respond. And so we have these conversations to work out those grievances and to get control of our emotions and just give the facts that we need to, so that people can hear outside. We also show our personal beliefs in, or place our emotions on display for rejection and judgment. So that happens in hard conversations, which is why it makes it so hard. No one wants to be judged. No one, wakes up in the morning like, I can't wait to get rejected today. like I can't wait to see who's gonna go off on me today. Like, we don't wake up with that feeling. We want to have a great feeling. And so people stay away from that based on how they want their day to go, what needs to be said. It almost brings on stress about it when we're thinking about these hard conversations. They're stressful times. So We also have these hard conversations because they make us want to retreat. We don't like them. Like, we don't want to sometimes speak our truth and be our authentic self. A lot of times, especially in work environments, we will be one way at work and a different way at home. So, we don't always speak our authentic self because we're at work and we want to be professional, but in your head, you're screaming, if we were at home, if this was somebody else, this is how I would have delivered this. And so, it makes you step up and become your authentic self. And these hard conversations, the more that you become comfortable with them, the more you realize that, hey, I can still be me and just change the way I deliver my message. Or I can have more control over my emotions in the moment when I'm that, or when I need to have a conversation that is stressful for me. And we also know that it may go against popular opinion or expectations. So when we have these conversations, my the way that I view something may not be the same way that someone else views something. And so um, that in itself can be a hard conversation. Okay. So those are some of the reasons why, and we can go to the next slide. And so when we look at them and we say, why are these conversations necessary? And it's really necessary because we want to have more people concerns and appear to be incompatible or a resolution that is needed. So when we're thinking about it, these hard conversations need some kind of conclusion. We can't just avoid them. Some of them you can probably, just say, I'm not dealing with this. But for a majority of time, when we're talking about work related, if you're someone's supervisor or boss, if you're an employee and your boss is asking you to do something and you're just like, I don't even want to deal with this today. It's a resolution, like something needs to be resolved about it, because if not, it just kind of continues. And then you have those what they call a snowball effect, when everything comes out and it all comes out at once. And we're going to talk about that later. But we also have to look at conflict as a form or technique of problem solving. And we grow every day. We teach our children. If you come from a nanny background, you're teaching your children how to problem solve on a regular basis, and so we never actually stop solving problems. Our brain is always solving a problem. And communication wise, we also are solving another problem, because some problems you can solve internally and you just, hey, that's a problem, I can figure it out by thinking and I'm good. But then there are some problems that can only be solved by talking about them. And so that's where you have this conflict, is that you have to find a reason or a solution to this problem. And so we also have to look at, it involves confrontational conversation. And so we have to use negotiation skills. And so a lot of times people don't think of conflict as negotiation, but a lot of the things that will deal with when we're doing this problem solving is we're negotiating. Like, I'm giving you some of my critique and I'm telling you what I think, but then you're also giving me feedback on what you believe and what you think. And so when we look at these, there is a lot of negotiation going into it, because we're going back and forth with trying to understand what it is that each other is saying and trying to work out a problem. And so it helps us face our fears and deal with our anxieties. That is, really one of the big things, is because we have these anxieties, they need to be dealt with. And the only way they can be dealt with is by facing, whatever this conversation is that you have to have. So it helps bring changes in relationship. A lot of times people do not realize how effective having these hard conversations can be, because a person may look at you one way, but then when they hear your viewpoint, they stop and they say, oh, well, I didn't realize, she felt that way, or I didn't realize that this person thought about this, or, oh, look, I view this the same way. I never thought this person would see it the same way that I do. We don't agree on a lot of things. And so it brings about changes, but it also sets boundaries. So if you have a boundary that needs to be set and you have the conversation in a way where it's effective, that boundary has now set up an easier flow of work, an easier flow of communication, and relating to that other person, because now they know, hey, this person gets upset when I call them, you know, early in the morning and ask them a whole bunch of questions. So that used to be my thing. When I would work in the morning as a nanny, I wasn't really a morning person. I'm kind of, get up, get dressed, go downstairs, have some coffee, and then let's talk. And one time I, was a live-in nanny, and the employers, they were really morning people. They would get up, they would be singing, they would be like laughing and joking. And I would come downstairs, looking like a grump and just wanting some coffee. And one day they sat me down, they were like, "You never say good morning, and we think that you don't like us." I'm like, I love my job. I just am not a morning person. And so they kind of learned from me at that point that, hey, I love the job, but I'm just not that morning person. And then I compromised by getting up and understanding that they needed that hello in the morning. They like that helps them get their day going, so we both made compromises, understanding each other's boundaries, because we had a hard conversation. And they told me they had been holding off on that conversation for weeks because they were nervous of how I would respond. And I'm just like, really? Like, I'm approachable, so we never know what another person is thinking about us or what they're seeing on the opposite side. And so it's important for us to have these conversations because they do change relationships. They do set boundaries. They also allow our voice to be heard when we need to bring awareness to a situation. If they would have never said anything, I would have still been walking around as grump face in the morning. So because they, stepped out and had the faith and, the boldness to say something to me, we had an amazing conversation, and I stayed with them for a really long time after that, understanding both from where we were coming from. And so these conversations are important and they are necessary. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so two main types of problem solving and strategies that we use. One of them we talked about earlier is mediation. The other one is conflict resolution. So if you have ever had to use either one of them, which I'm probably sure you have, you probably have just referred to it as conflict resolution. And so we'll go into it. Mediation is just what it says. It's an intervention. It's you on one side and someone else and two other people on the other side. So intervention in a dispute, it is in order to resolve a situation, and it's kind of like what an arbitrator would do. And then conflict resolution, even though it's an overall umbrella of problem solving, it's really a process of ending a dispute and reaching an agreement that satisfies both parties. So I will give you an example. If you are dealing with mediation would say, I'll just name random names. We'll say Sarah and Melissa. Sarah and Melissa have a problem. They are, arguing about who should have the TV remote. We'll just say that. Just a random. So first thing that comes to head. So you have Sarah and Melissa arguing about who should have the remote for the TV. And I come in and I say, Sarah, tell me what's going on. And Sarah tells me her side of the story. Then Melissa says, well, that's not what happened. It actually happened this way. And I had it first and she took it from me. And so they're going back and forth. So if I'm doing mediation, I would allow Sarah and Melissa to work it out together while I stand, or sit in and just help them. So it may sound something like, hey, Sarah, I think what Melissa is actually saying is you watched your show first, and now she wants to watch the show and she wants to hold the remote while she turns the TV. Um, and then I'll say, Melissa, is that what you're saying? And she says, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And then they'll go back and forth until they figure it out. But mediation is they actually can figure it out on their own. And I'm just standing in to make sure that each side is being heard, that they are respecting each other, and that they reach an agreement. Sometimes mediation cannot be done in one day, depending on the subject and the topic and how severe it is. So you see a lot of times when people are going through divorces, they may go to, someone who does mediation. They may go to a therapist, and it may take a long time. Sometimes if you have, something happening at work, the mediation may take several days. But it is something that you want. It is the main one that you want before you resort to conflict resolution. You would like for adults, especially adults, to be able to figure out how they can work together, how they can set healthy boundaries, and how they can respect each other and communicate. So if mediation can't be done, you would do conflict resolution. And so conflict resolution looks like this. It would be Sarah and Melissa fighting or arguing. Sarah gets up and walks out the room, and I come in and I say, well, hey, what's going on? Can you guys, come back and sit and chat? And Sarah says, I'm not going back in there. I don't even want to speak to her. I don't want to see her anymore. Which it happens. It happens with kids. It happens with adults. There are some things that people are just like, I don't even want to talk to that person. I was so, disrespected. I don't even feel like I want to face them. And so that's where conflict resolution comes in. It comes in where I have to say, okay, let me hear Sarah's side. And now let me go in the other room and let me listen to what Melissa has to say. And then I, as the person that is solving the conflict, I will make a judgment that will solve the problem for both of them without their input. And then they just kind of have to go with it. So if I say, okay, Sarah, I heard you and I heard Melissa, this is what I've decided. Melissa gets the remote, and Sarah, you can have the remote after she's done. Whether they like it or not, that is what happens. There's always going to be one person that's a little bit happier if you side with them. But then there's also going to be that person who is, having a hard time with whatever the decision is. So it really is based on how you solve the conflict and how you are able to communicate with both of them to get the sides figured out and get the sides done in a way that you can find some kind of compromise or just a resolution so that they're not going back and forth and that you are able to, alleviate it. But mediation is always going to be the first one that you want to go to because that allows them to resolve it together and build their own relationship and boundaries. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Okay, so here we have this amazing little survey that was done of over 800 people. And we're going to focus on the top 3. This is one of the surveys that I love to use because I feel like it best describes conflict in the workplace. And so at the top, you see that says 42% of fired employees said they deserved it. So that's a really high number. And what it tells you is that people know that when they're in the workplace, they know when they want to go. They know when they don't want to be there anymore. They know when they're not doing the best that they can be doing. That's 42% of people. And so the employers, are saying that these are the last bit of people that they fired. These are the statistics. And so 57% say that they fired someone because of their attitude issues. So they're saying this person had to come to work. They had a bad attitude. We couldn't talk to them about anything. They just, when they walked in, everybody's mood went down. And so we had to let him go. So this is 57% of employers. So if you've ever had to let someone go, you may fall into that category of having to let someone go because of their bad attitude. The second highest was 41%, and they fired people because of personality issues. So maybe that person was a great worker and had a great attitude, but they came to work and they couldn't get along with people. Their personality just didn't mesh well with the office. Maybe they were not a morning person and everybody else was. Maybe they came in and they always complained about everything. And nobody wanted to hear the complaining anymore. Whatever it was, their personality did not mesh well with what the employer wanted and what they needed. And so they ended up letting them go. The third top people that fired people, it was 40%, so close to the 41%. And they said they were just not compatible. They weren't completing their job as described. So that meant that the person was coming in and just wasn't doing their job. They couldn't, get them up to par to do what they needed to do. So if you look at all three of these, you see that these are all things that the attitude issues, the personality issues, or they were not completing a job as described. These are all things that, people fired, other people over. The other things were like poor attendance, stealing, tardiness, all those other things. But the top three are the ones that we're going to focus on. So we can go to the next slide. So we see from that 80% of the employers have fired people. That's what the statistics usually show, that 80% of people have fired someone. 48% of employers say that they would rehire someone that they have fired. So 48% is almost close to 50% of people saying, like, I would rehire that person. Even though I let him go at the time, I would probably bring him back. 33% of ex-employers or people that were fired or left said that they would return to someone that fired them. So you went from 42% saying, 42% of the people that were fired saying, hey, I know that I wasn't doing the best at my job and I deserve to be fired. And 33% said, I would go back after being fired. So if you have 33% of employees saying, I would go back after being fired, and 48% saying, I would rehire someone, that means that those top three things that people, complained about, they actually could have had a really great conversation and figured out some kind of compromise or, a way to work together. And it lets you know, as someone who deals with conflict, that they probably didn't take those steps. It probably was just like a lot of warning, but no kind of sitting down and saying, here's the problem, here's what I think that we can do to better our relationship before we have to terminate you. And so a lot of times these things could be avoided if we just took the time to have an open conversation and open communication in a work relationship where people feel they're respected and they're not intimidated by speaking to someone about something. And so it's really a big red flag that, if you have a high turnover rate at your work, that that most of the time when people have a high turnover rate, it's because one of these things are lacking, that there's not really good communication, there's a lot of intimidation, or people just don't feel heard and seen. And so those are things that can be adjusted and fixed with proper communication skills. So we can go to the next one. And so what are we hoping to gain from these conversations? We're looking at the outcome that allows parties to agree on a common vision, a plan, and a way to fix the problem going forward, and one that's not causing disturbance or unbalance in the work experience. So we want it to be fixed, but we don't want to have to flip the whole building upside down, trying to fix someone's issues or problems. We don't want people striking. We don't want everybody to get up and quit, but we do want to come together on some kind of common ground and find a vision and a plan and something that works. We want to start conversations, and these conversations may not always work out the way that we want them to, but we want to bring a shift in one perspective about you or about your thoughts. And that shift should also help them understand better, help them understand you better. So they should be able to walk away saying, oh, I didn't know that about her, but now I do. And then they should be able to move forward with that. And that one is also about boundary setting. The last one is, it causes a minor comfortability, but in the end, you have a sense of accomplishing it. You have a sense of walking away like, oh, I'm so glad that they understood me. I'm so glad that I got that off my chest. And that's like the anytime I do, consultations and they come back to me, they're like, I'm so glad I had the conversation. I don't know why I waited so long. It wasn't even that hard. A lot of times the stress and anxiety is more in our head than anything else. And so we want to make sure that, we have an approachable type of atmosphere, and adding language in our, workplace that allows for people to feel comfortable, having an open door setting. Sometimes you may not feel like having that open door policy. And so it's okay to set boundaries by, when I used to do HR, because I have an HR background. And when I used to do HR, there were days that I had closed office, because if not, people would just come in, sit down, and just start talking to me, telling me everything. And sometimes I wasn't in a mental space where I want to hear any bad news, or, have a whole bunch of supervisors telling me how they want to fire people and what do I need to do. And so we have to look at that. How do I set boundaries as an employer? How do I set boundaries as a manager and as a supervisor? Well, I want to be able to set those boundaries by letting them know I have an open door policy, or they can come to me and talk to me about things. But on certain days, maybe, we'll set it up where that's how they can do it. Or, how do I allow people to file grievances? Do they even know that they can file a grievance where they work? How do we have some type of, plan that allows for people to talk to us, and let us know how they feel, what they think. A lot of places have unions, but smaller businesses don't always have unions. Smaller businesses, don't always have these policies. And so a lot of times when you don't say it, you think that they know, like, hey, they can come and talk to me. But if you don't say it, they don't really know. And so a lot of times when people are dealing with conflict and they have these inner turmoils and they don't feel comfortable speaking because they have a problem with hard conversations and they would rather avoid it than, deal with it, you'll find that you'll find that you'll have people just leave instead of having these conversations. And so a small conversation just to say, hey, or email to everyone, I just want you guys to know we have an open door policy. If you ever feel like you need to talk about anything, please email me or call me. I am available to listen to, any grievance you have. And that will also open the door for people to feel like, I want to stay because I know that they want to hear what I have to say and they want to listen to me. So these are the things that we're hoping to gain from them. And you see at the top, I have this little sticker that says, be an active listener. The biggest part of conflict and solving conflict is being able to hear the problem without being defensive, being able to hear what the person is saying and what they need so that you can actually solve the problem. And so we want to be active listeners and be able to hear everything that they need. So we can go to the next one. Okay. So these are the 5 different ways that people solve conflict. I'm not going to go into them a lot because I want to get to the sandwich method, but there are 5 different ways that people usually solve conflict. And usually, the statistics show that one person will usually, I guess, kind of do two two of the five are like their main way of solving conflict. And so the first one, I'm just going to kind of randomly pick, but the first one I'll do is the last one, which is avoiding. And so a lot of people avoid conflict. That is so big. um, and you'll like, they'll just kind of have this idea of if I avoid it, it'll go away, or eventually, it'll solve itself. And most time conflict does not solve itself. Most time it doesn't go away. If it does, it's because someone either left and just didn't want to be bothered with it at all because they knew nothing was happening. And so with avoiding, you have low assertiveness and low cooperativeness. Like neither side is attempting to solve anything, and neither side is being satisfied or having their needs met. And so we don't want to do the avoiding. The other one is accommodating, which is also at the bottom. It's low assertiveness and high cooperativeness. So I'm not putting any effort into this. I just want to cooperate. I just want to satisfy whoever it is. And, it's okay if, my needs aren't met, or if it's at the expense of my own concerns. Like, I just want everybody to be happy. Just be happy. I'm going to accommodate whatever it is that you need. And I'm going to not say anything. And so accommodating and avoiding is almost the same, except that accommodating, you're at least cooperating, you're just not saying anything. And so those are the two that we want to really not have on the menu or on the plate as a regular form of solving problems. And there are some people that is the only two that they use. And so we want to move out of that. It's okay. And all five of these you may use at some point, dependent on the situation. Different situations call for a different tactic. But if you're using accommodating and avoiding all the time, it means that you are not actually asserting yourself. You're not setting any boundaries. People are walking over you. You're probably, highly stressed and annoyed because you're carrying all of this weight on you from things that you want to say that you don't. So we'll go back to the top with competing. And so competing is high assertiveness and low cooperation. So competing looks like you want to satisfy your own concerns, your own demands. How you feel about something is what you want everyone to feel about it. And so you'll see this a lot if you have like a team setting. You will have someone who has a high competitive type of personality, where if they think something about, any situation, they want their idea pushed and they will keep going and going and going. You see it a lot with salesmen, and they'll say, wait, but I have something else. Don't hang up. Don't do this, and they just want to keep talking to you because they want you to see it from their side and they want you to agree. And so sometimes it works out well. Sometimes you actually need a person that is competitive to get those sales in and to drive home something. But when you're in a team setting, it can be really difficult to deal with someone who has a competitive type of personality, because you always feel like I'm not being heard, or this person overspeaks me, or they over argue, or they're really great at getting their point across and I don't feel heard or seen. And so as a supervisor or employer, you want to make sure that if you see that type of personality in your team members, that it's okay to be competitive, but also make sure that everyone else in the team meeting is being heard. Maybe calling someone's name out and saying, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Because you want everyone to be heard equally. And so we also want to watch that when we're in team settings. When we're talking about collaborating, you're looking at high assertiveness and low cooperativeness. And so when you're looking at collaborating, which is what a lot of people like to use, you see a lot of this win-win situation. It's, we're trying to find a balance that works for both of us. So I'm going to collaborate by saying, this is a problem that we're having. And maybe, Melissa might have something that she wants to say, Sarah might have something that she wants to say, and they're both great ideas. And so since they're both great ideas, we're just going to maybe do both of them. And so that's a win-win situation. Or collaborating can look like if one person has a great idea, and everyone just kind of agrees and says, hey, like, you know, I'm going to accommodate it, but I'm also agreeing with it because I feel like this is a great idea. And so there's no one else is really adding to it, but everyone agrees with it. And so you look at it as a win. So that's collaborating. But then you have compromising, and compromising is medium assertiveness and medium cooperativeness. So you're trying to find an acceptable solution that only partially satisfies both individual concerns. And compromising is the one that you actually want, because that is the one that is best for boundary setting, team building, for really being able to see a person's character and being able to build with them as a team. And the reason why you want to use compromising is because compromising looks like us having a problem, I have a solution, someone else on my team has a solution, and maybe a third person has a solution. All the solutions are great. But instead of using one person's, solution and collaborating and everybody just agreeing, what we do is we take a part of each one of the ideas. We take a part of this one from mine. We take a part of this one from Sarah's, a part of this one from Melissa's. And then all three of us have combined our great idea to a new idea. I might not be 100% happy because you didn't use all of my idea, but I feel like I'm a part of a team that is able to work together because we took something and we made something new and we were able to use it. And so that is what compromising looks like. And so that's the one that you really want to use as much as you can when you have a team, because you want everyone's voice to be heard and not just one person all the time who comes up with great ideas, but you want to encourage the whole team to be able to really to be effective with their communication and to want to continue to give their input and continue to be a part of what you're doing, and that's building. And so you have less of a turnover rate, you have less of in-house bickering when you find ways to compromise instead of collaborating or competing. And so these are the ones that you want to use. I do often say, if you have someone who is very accommodating, if you know that you're going to have a team meeting and you're going to be problem solving, the best thing to do is bring that person that is always kind of, yeah, I like that too. You never really hear them say anything. They never really give their side, because that person has ideas and they just may have an accommodating way. And so one of the tips that I like to give teams is bring that person in on the conversation before everyone else. Give them time to actually think about what their idea would be, and get the solution to you. And then when you have the team meeting, you can pull that person aside and say, you don't have to pull them aside, but you can, choose that person and say, hey, I talked about this with Sarah and she had a great idea. Sarah, do you want to share your idea with everyone? Because once they do that, and you've already encouraged them and given them the space to speak, then they won't be so quick to just collaborate and accommodate everyone else. They'll actually have a voice, and they'll start using their voice more and more because they know that you're interested in hearing them. And so a lot of times people that are accommodating, they will just kind of side with everyone instead of actually letting their voices be heard and give an input. So hopefully that's something you can use in your team meetings. And we can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so how do we overcome our fears and learn how to communicate? And so these are going to be steps and techniques that we apply during, your conversation to help with your nerves. I always say practice, 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 because once you become comfortable and capable, then you're going to have more success with effective communication. So it's all about practice. It's all about being able to, sometimes I will visually have a conversation in my head. Like, how would it go if I said this? How do I think this will go? What would be my response? And so even if you can't, do role play or scenarios where you act it out, being able to sit down and think about how you would play this out is a really, really big and important part of the type of communication skills you want to develop. And we can go to the next one. Okay. And so now we're at the sandwich method. Some of you may have heard this before, and I use it a lot for, especially when we have to have a conversation instantly. Sometimes, they put you right on the spot and you don't get a chance to like think about it. You don't get a chance to kind of sit down and take it home and then kind of evaluate it and then bring it back to them. And so the sandwich method is super easy. It's literally just like my little sandwich on there. There's two pieces of bread, that are nice and soft and squishy. And then all the hard stuff is in the middle. I always say that, if you think of this and envision it in your head, it's easier when you have these conversations to speak it out. And so your bread at the beginning is the compliment. You're going to compliment and start with a compliment. And that compliment is, it should have a smile. It should be lighthearted. What you're trying to do is break the mood. There's nothing worse than someone coming over to you and saying, "Hey, we got to talk." You're like, "What did I do?" What happened? What are you about to say that's bad? Or, "Hey, take a seat." "Oh God, why am I sitting down? Just tell me now while I'm standing." And so you want to break the mood and lighten it, and just give them, the okay that they can let their defenses down. This is not a bad conversation, even if it is like what people would consider a bad conversation or a hard conversation. It doesn't have to be if we're sitting down and we're thinking of a solution. So you want to, let them know it's not a hard, bad situation. Have a smile on your face. Don't come to them all grim. Let their defenses be down first. And if you don't see, like, you'll be able to tell by people's body language and their facial expressions whether they are ready to have a conversation that's hard, where you might have to do problem solving. And so what I mean by that is, if you have a person that is, that you are not firing and you're trying to keep them, and you're sitting there saying, "We have this problem, but we really got to think of a solution." You want their guards to be down because you want them to be able to think properly without the anxiety and the stress in the conversation. And so you want to wait until their guard is down so that you can have the conversation. You want to give them a positive start. Give them a compliment. Let them know how much you appreciate them and how great they are, or whatever it is. Anything that is going to reassure the person that the conversation is safe and that they are in a safe place. So that's your compliment. Then you have your meat and cheese, which is the pain point and the problem with your solution. So you're going to bring up what the problem is. So you're going to bring up what the problem is. You're going to be very clear, precise, and brief. There's nothing worse than thinking you're about to get bad news and the person is dragging it out. So be very clear, precise, and brief. Like, get the problem out there so that they can be like, "Okay, now I know what the problem is." Explain to them why it is a problem. So a lot of times people miss that. They miss the point. They always say, "This is the problem and this is how I choose to solve it." But they don't explain why it's a problem. And a lot of people think differently. We have to realize that people come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different diasporas of places. And when they all come into the workplace, it all melts together. So you could be from the same town, from the same city, from the same high school, but the way that you were raised in your home is different than someone else's. And so it's important to explain to them what the problem is, not just tell them. So we want to tell them what the problem is and then give two solutions max. We only want to give two because we want to give the person we want to give the person a place to give a solution as well, so that we're creating this atmosphere of either compromising and being able to work together. And so we want to make sure that they feel like they're included in the conversation. So if you only have one solution, give the one solution. But if you have another, give two, and that is like the max. And I always say, make sure that this is not a multiple layered conversation. When you're using the sandwich method and when you're doing any type of problem solving, the main thing that you want to do is make it a one meat sandwich, one meat type of sandwich. It should only be turkey, not turkey salami. We're not doing a whole Italian sub. We just want one piece of, meat. Why is that important? Because there's nothing worse than having a problem. And then once you get into the conversation, someone says, well, I just don't like the way that you talk to me. And remember last week when I had a conversation with you, you even rolled your eyes. And now it's like, okay, you don't like the way I talk and you don't like the way I, do this. And so you just keep adding on stuff. I know, some of us have had relationships with people and they'll complain about one thing and they're having a conversation with you about one thing, but then they'll turn around and add two or three more things that you didn't even really realize was a problem. And so when we're trying to work on a solution, we only want to work on one solution for one problem at a time. Okay. So we want to be very careful with that. So we want to, state the problem, be clear and precise and brief, explain why it's a problem, give a solution, and then make sure that you give space for them to go ahead and say what they need to say as far as a solution. And so the last thing that you have your condiment, your bread, and that's kind of like your closing compliment and your revisit. You always want to revisit. So you're going to reassure them again. You're going to end it by, you've got that other piece of bread. So you're giving another compliment. You want to reassure them that they are an amazing person, that you really love working with them or whatever it is, so that they understand that this is not an attack. We're trying to grow professionally. You want to make sure that they remember that you are working together on a solution. So this is where they would put their input and their, say what they want to say as far as collaborating or compromising on this solution to find for this problem. You want to reiterate that, this is a peaceful solution. We're trying to work together. It's not just you, I'm not just getting on you, like we're working together on this. This is our problem, not just your problem. And then you want to make sure that you set a time to revisit. Like, we've solved this problem, for now, we're going to try this and see if this, solution works. And then we can revisit it at another time if you feel like it's just not working for you. So we want to leave the door open. That is very big. Leave the door open so that there's open communication. And even if you have to set a time, like let's meet again 2 weeks and Friday and see how things are working since we've had this conversation. And so that's what your sandwich method looks like. And so an example of how that would look is, I would say, we could probably close this out so I can see everybody, because I can't see everybody on this side. All right. And so how that would really look is if we have a class or something, or like I would say we have an office meeting. This is one I use all the time because it's so relatable. We have an office meeting and we have this standing meeting every Tuesday with our team at 8:00 in the morning. We usually don't start till 9, but on this day, everybody meets at 8. And you have this one person that comes every single week late. If they make it on time, like they're running through the door, they're flustered, and they're trying to, tell you everything that happened to them and why they're late. But you already started the meeting. And so what ends up happening is you started the meeting, everyone's kind of running in, she's kind of running in, and everyone's sitting there and they're listening to you. And the person comes in and they're like, oh, oh my gosh, you won't believe the traffic. It was just so bad. And oh, and she starts talking, and everybody's like, yeah, I had traffic this morning too. Now everyone's talking. No one is paying attention to what was just happening. And you're thinking in your head, here we go again. Like every single week, this one person does this. Like, I don't even want to say anything. You know it's a problem, but you don't really know how to deal with it. And so when you're going to talk to that person, the sandwich method would look like this. You know, hey Sarah, I would love to talk to you. Nothing bad. I just want to have a quick chat with you. Are you open for that? And of course, Sarah's going to say, yeah, I'm open, and you're going to give her a compliment. So you're going to say, I absolutely love your energy. You are always bubbly. You always make the mood and you always make us laugh. You're a great worker. We love you. I want to make sure you know that. Are you good? Like, yeah, okay. So I do have a problem that I would love to talk with you with and see if we can come up with a solution because I think that we can work together. You're going to say what the problem is. So the problem is every time we have our meetings on Tuesday, you're running late. I don't need to know why. I don't know what's going on. But what happens is when you come in and you start talking, it throws off the meeting. And I want us to stay on task so we can get everybody out to work to do what they have to do and we can make the meeting short. So what I would love to do, so now you've just stated the problem, you just told them why it's a problem. You have also said, this is what you want to do. So this is where you would give your two examples. So you would say, this is what I would like. I was thinking about it. And this is what I've kind of come up with, as a plan that we can, add is either I can give you my phone number. You can text me in the morning. If you're running late, just shoot me a quick text. And then I know that when you're on your way or that everything is okay. And then when you come in, you can just kind of sit down and relax and just, we'll catch you up later on whatever it is. Or what we can also do is if you need to text someone else and let them know that you're running late, because sometimes I may be talking and the person is there and then they can just kind of let us know and we'll continue on until you get there. Those are the two examples or, the two things that I can come up with, so how do you feel about that? Can you think of anything that you would like to add? Because, I really love you. I really think that you're amazing. And I really want you to be a part of our morning meetings. So what do you think you might want to add? And that person may say, that sounds great to me. I can do either one of them. Or they may say, in the morning, I'm not really great at texting because I'm driving, but maybe I can send a voice note to someone or whatever they may say. Okay, great. Let's try those. Any of those will work. Thank you for meeting with me and for really working with me and understanding why that was a problem and how we can better fix it. How about we revisit this in 2 weeks and you let me know how it worked out for you and we can chat about it later. So you have just literally had a conversation that was hard, but you did the sandwich method. That person didn't feel offended. They were able to work with you and solve that problem, but you also got the problem, figured out in a really short time. And you really were able to hear what they had to say, because they may say, well, this is the problem. I have to get my child to the sitter. And, usually 9s or 5, but when we do that early morning 8, I just run behind. So you give them that time to say what is happening so that you guys can come up with a conclusion and a solution together. And so that is how you would solve a problem like that using the sandwich method. You can use it with anything. I use it with my 6-year-old. Like, I use the same method with my 6-year-old, because she struggles with high anxiety. And so every time every time she thinks she's going to get in trouble, she gets nervous. And I'm like, you're not in trouble. You're fine. Mommy loves you. I just want us to make sure that after we eat our snack that we pick it up and we put the trash where it belongs and wash our hands. And so those are things that we're using on a regular basis. And so it's easy to kind of add it into what you're doing. So the main thing that I always tell people is, we're problem solvers. And if you are looking to have solve a problem, that if you go to someone with like what the problem is and no solution, then it's a complaint. And we don't want We're not in the complaining business. We don't want people to say, oh, all this person ever does is tell me their problems. They never solve anything. They're not doing anything. Like, why are they here? Because that's how it sounds. If people have like enough problems on their desk or enough things in their day that they have to solve, they don't want to hear a complaint. They want you to come to them with a problem that you have actually thought about and put some work and effort into finding a solution, and then you can work together. So I usually say, if you have a problem and you haven't thought of a solution, just don't even bring it up. It's a complaint. Keep it to yourself until we can figure out something, and then we can all kind of work together and, figure it out. So I know it's 2 o'clock and we didn't really do any scenario role play, but hopefully that helped with the scenario I just did, and I will open it up for questions if anyone has questions. Yes, no, everybody kind of understands the difference between mediation and conflict resolution. Have you had to use any of those? Okay,
Oh.
hi Gina. You want to unmute?
Oh, yes. For some reason, it occurred to me that I didn't have to type this question. Yes. So from time to time, we'll get clients who will call about an experience that they weren't satisfied with, and kind of their immediate approach or their immediate ask is like, I want a refund for this, or I want to see this paid for next time. And how do you approach that with clients when you see where they're coming from? You don't think that the solution that they're asking for is reasonable, but you also don't necessarily want to shut them down, because people are accustomed to, just like refunds and dissatisfaction is part of a lot of services, especially when you're a giant service like Amazon.
Right. And so what I would say is, if you have, do you have like something in your contract that talks about your refunds already, or how
We
you
do,
handle?
and we do credit a client if they weren't able to use their booking, or if that we agree the booking really didn't go, as expected, or they didn't really get what they thought they had purchased. But I
Mhm.
have just once had a client ask for us to cover the cost of a ticket because her babysitter had an emergency kind of an hour before her booking, and we
Mhm.
weren't able to address it quickly enough for her partner not to miss the event that they had tickets together. One of them stayed and watched the kids.
Okay.
So we don't refund tickets or, those sort of lost costs or lost opportunities. But I wasn't real sure how to approach that conversation with her, even though it is in the information that we don't do that. It doesn't mean customers won't ask for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so what I would say is, when you have a situation that is not, something that's normal, then you have to evaluate the whole thing. And so looking at the bigger picture is always going to be a really big factor when you're doing conflict resolution.
Hmm.
Is the person someone that you want to continue to have a relationship with? Is the person someone that normally complains? How long have you had the relationship with them?
Hmm.
Do you understand their point of view? Would you, if it were you, how would you want it handled? That's a really big one. Is there a way, like I said at the beginning, any type of conflict resolution is negotiation. So you think of it as a negotiation. What would work best for you? Hey, we may not be able to, you know, um, refund this fully, but what we can do is this. I feel like that's part of the going to the problem with a solution. So let the person know, I hear what you're saying. Give me time to think of a resolution, and I will get back to you, because that's not something that we normally do. But I do want to figure out if there's a way that I can accommodate you, or
Mm.
accommodate you in some way. And so just letting the person know a lot of times that you're actually thinking about it, and you're
Mhm.
actually giving it some kind of thought, you know, actually takes a lot of stress off of them. Like, hey, they're actually thinking about it. They may consider it, or, and so you may go back to them and say, hey, this is what we figure that we can do. We may not be able to, um, do this because this is a big deal. And it's, too much, or it's out of our budget, or it's out of what we, normally do, but we may be able to offer you this. And so I feel like there's always a way, there's always a workaround
Hmm.
if you take the time to stop and think about it. And like I said, when we are doing these compromises, the person may not always be super happy about what you're coming up with. Um, you may be able to take part of their idea and part of your idea and make a compromise. It may not always look exactly the way that they want it, but you did offer something,
Yeah,
so
that's
if,
true.
yeah, so we have to look at it that way. Sometimes it's not always a great outcome, but we do the best that we can with our businesses. And we want to make sure that we let people know that we respect them, but we also, are running a business and we have boundaries. And so, there's nothing wrong with them asking. My mother always say the worst that someone can tell you is no. And so you have that whole outlook of the worst that someone can tell you is no, but at least I asked, and it is open to negotiation.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
So
a good point.
yeah,
Thanks.
so that's what I would say. Okay. Anybody else have a question or a problem that they have come up with that they wish they would have thought about it differently or handled it differently, and then maybe we can talk about it? Yes, no? Okay. So what I would say is if you really enjoyed this class, you can definitely contact me. I have a program that I do. It's actually three different programs that I do with agencies, and I work with them and their teams to work on conflict resolution. Some people hire me as like the person that does mediation for them and trains their team to either work with their clients or do all of that good stuff. So if you're interested, if you feel like you need some help with conflict resolution, if you feel like even you personally, like I need to get better with dealing with these hard conversations and knowing how to, you know, um, handle it in the moment, I do all of those trainings. And so would love to work with you, would love to have you sign up for one of the classes that I do quarterly where we delve into conflict resolution and we actually do scenario role play. So I give scenarios, we act it out, we critique it, and really work on it together so that we are building effective communication with our teams and really feeling better with ourselves with how we communicate. So thank you for staying to the end and listening for this past hour as I ramble on about conflict. And I look forward to meeting you and seeing you. You can find me on nannykimонthego.com. I'm also Nanny Kim on the go everywhere, like on all social media outlet forms or whatever. And I'm also on LinkedIn under Kimberly C. Brown. So I will I think I have a send out that people can have. I've sent it to Engine Hire, so they'll probably send it to you, mail it to everybody that came today. And it's just kind of the sandwich method, kind of a takeaway sandwich method, so you can kind of practice at home and know the different, things to do, and 5 takeaways for conflict resolution. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you so much, Kimberly. This was
You're
I'm not sure if you've seen, but a few people left you a few messages.
Oh, I see. Thank you.